My dad toasted, "He's the son I'm proud of." Then the waitress put the $5,650 bill heavy in front of me. My brother just smirked while everyone waited. I stood up and slid it back. The whole room went silent. The leather folder landed with a soft thud in front of me, and I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. 37 people had just finished eating at Mercer's, the kind of steakhouse where the cocktails cost what I used to spend on groceries for a week. My father was still standing, wine glass raised, his face flushed with satisfaction. To Derek, he'd said moments before, clapping my older brother on the shoulder. The son who finally made something of himself. The son I'm proud of. I watched the waitress retreat, her apologetic eyes meeting mine for half a second. She knew. Everyone at this table knew what was about to happen, except maybe Derek's new fiancée, Lauren, who looked uncomfortable in her designer dress. My brother leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. The same expression he wore when we were kids and he'd broken something of mine, then convinced our parents I'd done it. He adjusted his Rolex, letting it catch the light. Waiting. The folder sat there between us like a loaded weapon. I could feel my wife Sarah's hand on my knee under the table, a gentle warning pressure. "Don't make a scene," it said. But Sarah didn't understand. She'd grown up in a normal family where birthdays were celebrated equally and success wasn't a competition with a predetermined winner. I opened the folder. The number at the bottom had 3 digits before the decimal point. $5,650. For one dinner. Dry-aged ribeyes for everyone, a $400 bottle of wine that Dad insisted on because Derek deserves the best, appetizers I hadn't ordered, desserts I hadn't touched. "Well?" Dad's voice cut through the murmur of conversation that had resumed around us. "We're all waiting, Marcus." I stood up slowly, picking up the leather folder. Every eye at the table locked onto me. My Aunt Patricia stopped mid-sentence. Derek's college roommate, who I'd met exactly once before tonight, put down his phone. Mom's fingers tightened around her wine glass, her knuckles going white. I slid the bill across the white tablecloth. It traveled the length of the table, spinning slightly, before coming to rest directly in front of my father. "No," I said. The word came out steady, calm. "I don't think so." The silence that followed felt alive, crackling with electricity. Derek's smirk faltered. Dad's face went from flushed to red, a vein appearing at his temple that I recognized from childhood. That vein meant trouble, meant lectures about responsibility and disappointment and how I'd never measure up. "Excuse me?" Dad's voice was low, dangerous. "You heard me." I remained standing, my hand steady even though my heart was hammering. "You want to throw a party for Derek? Great. But I'm not financing it." "Marcus." Mom's voice was pleading. "Don't be dramatic. It's just dinner." "Just dinner," I repeated. "Right. Just like Derek's graduation party was just a party. His wedding to Amanda was just a wedding. His promotion celebration was just drinks. How much have I paid over the years, Mom? Did you ever add it up?" Sarah stood beside me, her hand finding mine. I hadn't asked her to, but I was grateful. Across from us, Derek finally spoke. "Always the victim," he said, shaking his head. "Can't just be happy for someone else, can you?" "Happy?" The laugh that escaped me was harsh. "You want me to be happy? I'm thrilled you made partner at the firm, Derek. Genuinely. But what I won't do is subsidize Dad's hero worship while he pretends I don't exist except when it's time to pay." I pulled out my wallet, extracted 320s, and placed them next to my plate. "That covers Sarah and me, plus tip. The rest of you can figure it out yourselves." "You ungrateful," Dad started, but I cut him off. "Ungrateful? I put myself through college while you paid Derek's full ride. I started my business from nothing while you handed him a position at your golf buddy's law firm. I've shown up to every family function, paid for half of them, and the only time you mention my name is when you need something." The words spilled out like water from a broken dam, years of them, decades. "But the funniest part? You still don't even know what I do for a living." Dad's mouth opened, then closed. The vein at his temple pulsed. "He's a software engineer," Sarah said quietly. "He built an application that hospitals use for patient data management. 17 states have adopted it." "I didn't ask you," Dad snapped, but there was something else in his voice now. Uncertainty. "No, you never ask," I said. "You never have. But I'm done pretending it doesn't matter." I turned to leave, Sarah's hand still in mine. Behind us, chaos erupted. Voices overlapping, Derek calling me a selfish piece of work, Mom crying, various relatives trying to mediate. I didn't look back. We'd parked 3 blocks away because the valet was another expense I'd seen coming. The autumn air felt clean after the stuffiness of the restaurant. Sarah didn't speak until we reached the car, just squeezed my hand tighter. "I'm proud of you," she said finally. I unlocked the doors, but we didn't get in. I needed a minute to let the adrenaline settle. "Yeah?" That took guts. Or stupidity. I just blew up my family in a room full of people. A family that's been using you as an ATM. She cupped my face in her hands. Marcus, I've been watching this for 5 years. Every holiday, every celebration, every crisis. They call you when they need money or a favor, and Derek gets called for everything else. You deserve better. My phone buzzed. Then again. And again. I pulled it out and saw 14 messages lighting up the screen. Mom, 2 aunts, Derek, my cousin Jenny, even Derek's fiancée. I turned it off without reading any of them. Let's go home, Sarah said. I'll make us actual dinner. Something that costs less than a used car. The drive back to our modest 3-bedroom in the suburbs felt longer than usual. We'd bought the house 2 years ago, right after my company, Data Vault Solutions, had landed its first major contract with a hospital network in Ohio. It wasn't much compared to Derek's downtown condo with the river view, but it was ours. We'd painted every room ourselves, planted the garden out back, installed the fence when we'd adopted our dog, Maxwell. Maxwell greeted us at the door with his typical enthusiasm, all wagging tail and slobbery kisses. Sarah headed to the kitchen while I took him out to the backyard. The familiar routine helped settle my nerves. Throw the tennis ball, watch him chase it, repeat. Simple. Uncomplicated. Unlike the mess I'd just created. When I came back inside, Sarah had changed into sweats and was pulling leftovers from the fridge. Pasta okay? Perfect. We ate on the couch, Maxwell's head resting hopefully on my knee. Sarah turned on a cooking show we'd been following, and for an hour, I almost forgot about the restaurant. Almost. But the weight of what I'd done kept pressing against my chest. They're going to make me the villain, I said during a commercial break. You know that, right? This will become the story of how I ruined Derek's engagement celebration because I'm jealous. Maybe. Sarah set down her fork. But you and I know the truth. Isn't that enough? I wish it was. My phone stayed off all weekend. Saturday morning, I went for a run, came back and helped Sarah with the grocery shopping, spent the afternoon working in my home office. Data Vault was in the middle of negotiations with a hospital system in Pennsylvania, and the project required my full attention. Lines of code, database structures, security protocols, these made sense. These had clear right and wrong answers. Sunday evening, I finally turned my phone back on. 47 messages. I scrolled through them, my stomach sinking with each one. Mom, how could you embarrass us like that? Your father is devastated. Aunt Patricia, very disappointed in your behavior, Marcus. Family comes first. Derek, showed your true colors. Don't bother coming to the wedding. Jenny, hey, just wanted to say I get it. Call me if you need to talk. The last one surprised me. Jenny was Dad's sister's daughter, a year younger than me. We'd been close as kids, but she'd moved to Seattle for work and we'd drifted apart. I called her. Marcus. Her voice was warm, familiar. I was hoping you'd reach out. You were the only one who didn't tell me what a terrible person I am. That's because you're not. I heard her moving, a door closing. Look, I was there. I saw the whole thing. And honestly, it was about time someone stood up to Uncle Richard. Dad's going to disown me. Maybe. But Marcus, he's been treating you like second choice since you were kids. I remember. I saw it every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. Derek got the attention, the praise, the opportunities. You got the leftovers. I just couldn't do it anymore, Jenny. I couldn't sit there and pretend it was okay. You shouldn't have to. She paused. For what it's worth, everyone at that table knew you were paying. They were just too comfortable with the arrangement to say anything. We talked for another 20 minutes. She told me about her job at a tech startup, her recent breakup, her plans to visit her mom for Christmas. Normal conversation with someone who didn't expect anything from me except to be myself. When we hung up, I felt marginally better. Monday morning brought a different kind of message. An email from my father, sent at 6:47 a.m. Marcus, your behavior on Friday was unacceptable. You humiliated your brother and disrespected your family in front of friends and colleagues. I'm writing to inform you that you are no longer welcome at family gatherings until you apologize to Derek and myself. Furthermore, I think it's best if we have some distance. Don't call your mother. She's too upset to speak with you. Disappointed, Dad. I read it 3 times, looking for some hint of self-awareness, some acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, they'd played a part in this. Nothing. Just disappointment and distance. Sarah found me staring at the screen when she came down for coffee. She read over my shoulder, her hand coming to rest on my back. I'm sorry, she said softly. Don't be. This is what I wanted, right? Freedom from the obligation? Freedom doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. She was right. It hurt like a physical wound, this severing of connection. But underneath the hurt was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. I drafted a response, deleted it, drafted another. Finally settled on. Dad, I understand. I won't be reaching out. Marcus. Short. Clean. No apologies, no explanations. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Work became my refuge. The Pennsylvania hospital deal closed successfully, and I threw myself into the implementation. My business partner, Tony, noticed the change in my energy during our Wednesday video call. You seem different, he said. Focused. What happened? Tony and I had started Data Vault together 6 years ago, fresh out of graduate school with more ambition than sense. He handled the business development side while I managed the technical architecture. We'd built something solid, something that actually helped people. Last year we'd cleared $500,000 in revenue, and this year looked even better. Had a falling out with my family, I said. Long story. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Fair enough. But Marcus? Whatever it is, don't let it eat at you. I've known you too long. You go silent and internal when you're hurt. I'm fine. Right. And I'm a professional ballet dancer. He leaned closer to the camera. Look, we're partners. Friends. You don't have to tell me details, but don't pretend you're okay if you're not. I appreciated Tony. He didn't pry, didn't push, just opened the door and let me decide whether to walk through it. Eventually, I gave him the condensed version. The dinner, the bill, the blow-up. Good for you, he said when I finished. About time you set some boundaries. Everyone else thinks I'm a monster. Everyone else wasn't paying their bills. He grinned. Besides, you've got me and Sarah. We're better company anyway. 3 weeks passed. Halloween came and went. Sarah and I handed out candy to neighborhood kids, Maxwell barking excitedly at every doorbell ring. I didn't hear from my parents or Derek. Radio silence, exactly as Dad had promised. But I did hear from someone unexpected. Lauren, Derek's fiancée, sent me a message on LinkedIn of all places. Marcus, I hope this doesn't overstep, but I wanted to reach out. Could we meet for coffee? There's something I'd like to discuss. No pressure if you're not comfortable. I showed Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. Should I go? Do you want to? I don't know. Maybe she wants to yell at me in person. Or maybe she has her own perspective on things. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. Your call, but I think you should hear her out. I agreed to meet Lauren at a coffee shop near her office downtown. She arrived exactly on time, looking professional in a navy blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. We ordered, she got a latte, I stuck with black coffee, and settled into a corner booth. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I wasn't sure you would. I'm curious why you wanted to. Lauren folded her hands around her cup. She had the kind of composure that came from years of practice, probably from her work as a corporate attorney. I wanted to apologize. That threw me. For what? For not saying anything at the dinner. For sitting there while your father put you in that position. She met my eyes directly. I've been with Derek for 2 years. I've watched how your family treats you. The pattern is obvious once you see it. Derek doesn't seem to think there's a pattern. Derek has benefited from the pattern his entire life. Of course he doesn't see it. She took a sip of her latte. Look, I care about him. I'm going to marry him. But that doesn't mean I'm blind to his faults or your family's dynamics. Why are you telling me this? Because someone should. Lauren leaned forward. And because I think you should know that not everyone blamed you for what happened. Several people at that table reached out to me afterward. They said it was about time, that they'd been uncomfortable with how things were for years. Who? Your cousin Jenny, for one. Your Uncle Tom. Even Derek's friend from law school, Michael. He told me he almost offered to split the bill himself because the whole situation felt wrong. I processed this information, trying to reconcile it with the angry messages I'd received. But my parents are defensive because you held up a mirror and they didn't like what they saw. Lauren's expression softened. Marcus, I'm not asking you to reconcile or apologize. I just thought you deserved to know you weren't as alone as you might feel. We talked for another hour. She told me about her own family, about her younger sister who'd been the overlooked one growing up. She asked about my work, actually listened to the answers, seemed genuinely interested in the technical challenges of healthcare data security. By the time we parted ways, I felt lighter somehow. One more thing, Lauren said as we walked to the parking garage. Derek doesn't know I'm here. I'd appreciate if we kept it that way. You don't think he'd understand? I think he'd feel betrayed. He sees this whole situation as you attacking him, not as you defending yourself. She paused. I'm working on helping him see other perspectives, but it's slow going. 32 years of being the golden child doesn't reverse overnight. I drove home thinking about what she'd said. About Derek feeling attacked, about perspective, about the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of our place in the world. Maybe Derek genuinely believed he deserved all the attention, all the support. Maybe he'd never questioned whether the playing field was level because from his position, everything looked fair. Thanksgiving approached, and for the first time in my life, I wouldn't be spending it with my parents. Sarah's family invited us to join them in Michigan, but the thought of explaining the situation to her relatives made me tired. We decided to stay home, just the two of us and Maxwell. We can start our own traditions, Sarah said, scrolling through recipes on her tablet. Make whatever we want. No predetermined menu, no family drama, no expectations. We invited Tony and his wife, Maria, and Jenny, who flew in from Seattle. 5 of us around our dining room table, eating food we'd actually chosen, laughing at stories that didn't end in passive-aggressive criticism. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. Jenny pulled me aside while we were cleaning up, her voice low. Mom asked about you. She wanted to know if I'd talk to you. What did you tell her? The truth. That you seemed happy. She handed me a dish to dry. Uncle Richard is still refusing to discuss it. And Helen cries every time someone mentions your name. Derek's been telling everyone you're jealous of his success. Sounds about right. But here's the thing. Jenny glanced toward the living room where the others were setting up a board game. Mom said something interesting. She said Uncle Richard has always been harder on you than Derek, and she never understood why. She thinks it's because you remind him of himself before he made it big with his business. How is that my fault? It's not. But think about it. He sees his younger self in you, the one who had to struggle and fight for everything. Derek represents who he became, successful, comfortable, entitled. Of course he's going to favor the version of himself he prefers. I'd never thought of it that way. Dad had built his commercial real estate company from the ground up, working brutal hours, sacrificing everything to make it successful. By the time Derek and I came along, he'd already made it. We'd grown up comfortable, never wanting for anything material. But somewhere in his head, maybe he'd decided that Derek deserved the easy path because Dad himself had earned it, while I needed to prove myself the way he had. That's twisted, I said. Family dynamics usually are. Jenny dried her hands on a towel. But it's not your responsibility to fix his issues with his own past. You've spent enough years trying. December brought snow and a surge in new business inquiries. Data Vault was being featured in a healthcare technology magazine, and the exposure brought attention from hospital systems across the country. Tony and I had to hire 2 more developers to keep up with demand. We moved into a larger office space, brought on an administrative assistant. The company I'd built from nothing was becoming something real, something substantial. Sarah threw me a surprise party for my 34th birthday, inviting the friends we'd made over the years, neighbors, colleagues, people who knew me for who I actually was rather than who I was supposed to be. No one mentioned my family. No one asked why my parents weren't there. It was perfect. But late that night, after everyone had gone home and Sarah had fallen asleep, I found myself looking at old family photos on my phone. Derek and me as kids, building sandcastles at the beach. Middle school graduation, both of us in our awkward phase. High school, where the divergence had started to become obvious. Derek lettering in 3 sports, me in the robotics club. Derek's college acceptance celebration, my graduation where Dad had left early for a business call. I'd spent so many years trying to earn something that was never going to be freely given. The realization sat heavy in my chest. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Michael. Derek's friend from the dinner. I hope this isn't weird, but I wanted to reach out. I'm a partner at Henderson & Associates. We're looking for someone to overhaul our data management systems. Would you be interested in discussing a contract? I stared at the message, reading it twice to make sure I understood correctly. Henderson & Associates was a major firm, the kind of client that could transform Data Vault's profile completely. How did you get my number? I typed back. Lauren. She thought you might be interested. No pressure, but I'd like to talk business if you're open to it. We scheduled a meeting for the following week. I brought Tony with me, and we spent 3 hours in their conference room discussing their needs, our capabilities, the scope of potential collaboration. Michael was professional, thorough, and by the end of the meeting, we had the framework for a contract that would be worth more than everything we'd done in the previous year combined. This is huge, Tony said as we walked back to the car. This could change everything for us. I know. Does Derek work at this firm? He does. And his friend just handed us a massive contract? Tony shook his head. That's either really generous or really complicated. It turned out to be both. The contract negotiations took 3 weeks, but by mid-January, everything was finalized. Data Vault Solutions would be implementing a comprehensive data management system for Henderson & Associates, a project that would take 18 months and establish us as major players in the legal tech space. Derek found out on a Tuesday. I know because that's when he called me for the first time since the restaurant. You went behind my back, he said without preamble. You used my connections to benefit yourself. Michael reached out to me, I replied. I didn't use anything. He had a business need, I had a solution. This is my firm, Marcus. My territory. Your territory? Derek, it's business. They needed data security, and Data Vault is good at what we do. This has nothing to do with you. Everything you do is about me. It always has been. You're obsessed with competing with me. The accusation was so absurd, so backwards from reality, that I laughed. Competing with you? Derek, I built my company from scratch while you were handed a position at Dad's friend's firm. I went to state school on loans while you went to Yale on Dad's dime. The only competition happening here is the one you invented to justify getting everything handed to you. You're unbelievable. No, I'm done. I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done making myself smaller so you can feel bigger. And I'm definitely done pretending that we had the same starting line. He hung up on me. I sat there holding the phone, feeling nothing but tired. Sarah appeared in the doorway of my office. Derek? She asked. How'd you know? You get this particular kind of exhausted look when you deal with your family. She came around the desk and wrapped her arms around me from behind. You okay? I think so. Is it wrong that I don't feel guilty? Not even a little bit. The Henderson contract moved forward despite Derek's anger. Michael remained professional, as did the other partners we worked with. I learned through Lauren, who'd been texting me periodically with updates, that Derek had made a formal complaint about the conflict of interest, but it went nowhere. There was no conflict. I'd been vetted and hired based on merit. He's having a hard time with it, Lauren told me during one of our coffee meetings, which had become a monthly occurrence. He's used to being the successful one, the one Dad brags about. Now you're landing major contracts and getting write-ups in trade magazines. I'm not doing this to spite him. I know that. You know that. Derek sees it differently. She stirred her coffee absently. For what it's worth, I think it's good for him. He's never had to question whether he earned his position before. How are things with you two? Complicated. We've postponed the wedding. That surprised me. Because of this? Because of a lot of things. The situation with you was a catalyst, but it exposed some fundamental differences in how we see the world. He thinks family loyalty means accepting any behavior, no matter how harmful. I think loyalty means calling out harm when you see it. I'm sorry. Don't be. If we can't navigate this, better to know now than after we're married. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Besides, you've given me an unexpected gift. What's that? An example of what boundaries look like. I've been letting my own family walk all over me for years. Watching you stand up for yourself made me realize I could do the same. We parted ways that afternoon with a hug, two people who'd become friends through unlikely circumstances. I drove back to the office thinking about ripple effects, how one moment of standing your ground could cascade into changes you never anticipated. February brought a cold snap and my mother's birthday. In previous years, I would have organized a family dinner, bought an expensive gift, made sure everything was perfect. This year, I sent a card in the mail with a simple message, hope you have a wonderful day. Love, Marcus, and Sarah. No gift. No dinner. No phone call. Just acknowledgement that the day existed without any expectation of reciprocity. Mom called me 3 days later. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Marcus. Her voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for the card. You're welcome. A long pause. I could hear her breathing, gathering courage or composure or both. Your father is still very angry, she said finally. But I miss you. I miss my son. I'm right here, Mom. I've always been right here. That's not fair. Isn't it? I kept my voice gentle but firm. When was the last time you called just to talk? Not to ask me to handle something or pay for something or show up somewhere. Just to talk. Silence. I love you, I continued. But I can't keep being the one who gives everything and gets nothing back except criticism. It's not sustainable. We never meant, she stopped. Started again. I didn't realize. I suppose I didn't want to realize. I know. Can we have coffee? Just you and me? I thought about it. Weighed the risks against the possibility of something changing, something healing. Maybe, I said. Let me think about it. That's fair. She sounded small, older somehow. Marcus? I am proud of you. I should have said it more. I should have said it at all. We hung up shortly after. I sat with the conversation for a long time, turning it over in my mind. Sarah found me there an hour later, staring out the window at the snow. That was Mom, I told her. She wants to have coffee. How do you feel about that? Conflicted. Part of me wants to believe things could be different. Part of me knows better. They could be different, Sarah said carefully. If she's willing to actually change. But you'd have to be okay with the possibility that she's not. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Then tell her that. You don't owe her anything right now, Marcus. Including your time. I didn't call Mom back right away. Instead, I focused on work, on the Henderson project, on the life Sarah and I were building. We started talking about kids, about whether we wanted to expand our family. The conversation felt different now, lighter somehow. Before, I'd always worried about bringing children into the dysfunction of my extended family. Now that distance existed, the future looked different. More hopeful. Update 1. It's been 6 months since I posted the original story, and people have been asking what happened next. The short version, everything changed. The long version is more complicated. I eventually had coffee with Mom. It took me 3 weeks to agree, and I insisted on a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes where neither of us had any history. Sarah offered to come with me, but this felt like something I needed to do alone. Mom looked older than I remembered. The lines around her eyes had deepened, and there was a hesitation in her movements that was new. We ordered drinks and sat down, the silence stretching awkward between us. "I've been in therapy," she said abruptly. "Since January. Your Aunt Patricia recommended someone." That caught me off guard. Therapy? Individual counseling. To work through some things. She wrapped her hands around her mug. The therapist asked me to describe my relationship with each of my sons. When I finished, she asked why I described 2 completely different parenting styles. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what to say, so I waited. "Your father and I, we had a plan when you boys were young. Derek was the firstborn, the one who would carry on the family business, make us proud in obvious ways. You were different. Quieter, more internal. We didn't know how to engage with you the same way." "So you just didn't engage at all?" "We told ourselves you didn't need the same attention. That you were self-sufficient." Mom's eyes were wet. But that was an excuse. The truth is, it was easier to focus on Derek. He wanted what we wanted. You wanted your own things, and we didn't know how to support that. "I wanted you to care," I said quietly. "That's all I ever wanted." "I know. I see that now." She reached across the table, then pulled back, uncertain. "Marcus, I can't undo 34 years. I can't give you the childhood you deserved. But I'm trying to understand how I failed you, and I'm trying to do better." "What about Dad?" Her face fell. "Your father isn't ready. He's struggling with the idea that he might have been wrong. About anything. So nothing's changed with him. I won't lie to you. Your father is stubborn, and he's built his entire identity around being right. Admitting he mistreated you would require him to reconstruct how he sees himself. I don't know if he's capable of that." At least she was being honest. I appreciated that more than I would have expected. We talked for 2 hours. Mom asked about Data Vault, really asked, taking notes when I explained the technical aspects. She wanted to know about Sarah, about our house, about Maxwell. Small things, but they mattered. For the first time in memory, my mother was treating me like someone she wanted to know. "Can we do this again?" she asked as we were leaving. "Can I call you sometimes? Not to ask for anything. Just to talk." "We can try," I said. "But Mom, I need you to understand something. I'm not coming back to family dinners where I'm treated like an afterthought. I'm not paying for celebrations of Derek's achievements while mine are ignored. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be different. I understand." She hugged me, and I let her, feeling the unfamiliarity of it. "Thank you for giving me a chance." I started having coffee with Mom once a month. The conversations were sometimes awkward, sometimes surprisingly easy. She told me about her own childhood, about her overbearing father who did favorites among his 4 daughters. She'd sworn she'd never do that to her own kids, then had done exactly that without realizing it. Generational patterns, her therapist called it. Breaking them required conscious effort every single day. Meanwhile, the Henderson contract was transforming Data Vault. We hired 5 more people, moved into an even larger office space, started getting inquiries from firms across the country. A legal tech magazine did a feature on our work, and suddenly Tony and I were fielding calls from investors interested in helping us scale. Derek and I hadn't spoken since that phone call in January. According to Lauren, who'd officially broken off the engagement in March, he'd thrown himself into work, taking on more cases than he could reasonably handle. She'd heard through mutual friends that he'd been telling people had stolen his client, poisoned his relationship, ruined his life. "He's not doing well," Lauren told me during one of our coffee dates. "I feel guilty sometimes. Like I should have tried harder to make it work." "You tried. He wasn't willing to meet you halfway." "No, he wasn't." She traced the rim of her cup. "It's strange. I thought I loved him. But I think what I actually loved was the idea of him. The successful attorney from a good family, the partner who looked perfect on paper. When I started seeing who he really was underneath, the person who'd never had to question his privilege or examine his behavior, I realized we wanted different things." "What do you want?" "Someone who's done the work of becoming self-aware. Someone who can admit when they're wrong. Someone who sees me as an equal, not an accessory to their success." She started dating someone from her firm in May, a senior associate who'd gone through a divorce and therapy and come out the other side with genuine humility. I met him once when the four of us, him, Lauren, Sarah, and me, went to dinner. He seemed solid, kind, the type of person who asked questions and actually listened to answers. I like him, Sarah said on the drive home. He's nothing like Derek. That's probably why she likes him. Summer came, and with it, the news that Dad had been hospitalized with a minor heart attack. Mom called me from the emergency room, her voice shaking. "Can you come?" she asked. "Please. I know you and your father aren't speaking, but I need you here." I went. Not for Dad, but for Mom, who'd been trying so hard to bridge the gap between us. The hospital was cold and sterile, fluorescent lights humming overhead. I found Mom in the cardiac wing waiting room, looking small and frightened. "They're running tests," she said. "They think it was stress-related. His blood pressure has been through the roof." Derek arrived 20 minutes later with his new girlfriend, a paralegal from his firm. He walked past me without acknowledgement, going straight to Mom. I stayed in my corner, texting Sarah updates, feeling like an intruder in my own family's crisis. Hours passed. Doctors came and went with updates. Dad was stable, would need medication and lifestyle changes, should make a full recovery. When they finally let us see him, he was propped up in bed, looking gray and exhausted. His eyes landed on me, and something flickered across his face. Surprise? Anger? I couldn't tell. "You came," he said. "Mom asked me to." We stared at each other across the hospital room, years of resentment and misunderstanding thick in the air. Derek positioned himself on Dad's other side, the faithful son in his moment of need. "I'm glad you're okay," I said. "But I should go. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." "Marcus." Dad's voice stopped me at the door. "Wait." I turned back. He looked uncomfortable, struggling with something internal. "The doctors said I need to reduce stress. Make changes." He took a breath, wincing slightly. "Your mother tells me you've been having coffee together." "We have. She says you've built a successful company. That you're doing well." "I am." Another long pause. Derek shifted, looking between us with an expression I couldn't read. "I've been unfair to you," Dad said finally, the words clearly costing him something. "Your mother's therapist seems to think so, anyway. I'm not ready to. I can't do what she's doing, the counseling and all that. But I can acknowledge that I've favored your brother. That I've expected you to support family events financially without reciprocating. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to addressing the depth of what had happened between us. But it was more than I'd ever expected to hear from him." "Okay," I said. "That's it? Okay? What do you want me to say, Dad? That it's fine? That 34 years of being invisible is forgiven because you had a health scare?" I kept my voice level. "I'm glad you can acknowledge it. That's a start. But acknowledgement without change doesn't mean much. Your mother says you've set boundaries. About family dinners and such." "I have. I can respect that." He looked away, toward the window. "I don't agree with it, but I can respect it. That's all I'm asking for." I left the hospital feeling strange, untethered. Sarah met me at home with dinner and a hug, letting me process without pushing for details. That night, lying in bed, I realized something important. I didn't need my father's approval anymore. That desperate hunger for recognition, for validation, for him to see me, it had quieted somewhere along the way. The Henderson project wrapped successfully in August. Tony and I celebrated with the team, then sat down to discuss what came next. We had offers from 3 different venture capital firms, all wanting to help us expand nationally. "This is it," Tony said, reviewing the proposals. "This is the moment that determines whether we stay small and comfortable or take the leap." We took the leap. By September, Data Vault Solutions had received series of funding, hired 12 more employees, and opened a satellite office in Chicago. I was traveling more, speaking at conferences, being interviewed for podcasts about healthcare data security. The kid who'd been invisible at family dinners was becoming visible in his industry. Derek sent me an email in October. Subject line, "Truce?" "Marcus, I've been thinking about everything that's happened over the past year. Lauren ending our engagement, you landing the Henderson contract, Dad's health scare. I've been angry at you for a long time, but I'm starting to realize that anger is misplaced. I'm not ready to have some big emotional conversation about our childhood or who got what from Mom and Dad. But I am ready to stop being enemies. We're brothers. That should mean something. If you're willing, I'd like to get coffee. Just the two of us. No parents, no significant others, no agenda beyond 2 brothers talking." "Derek." I showed the email to Sarah, who read it carefully. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think people can change, but only if they want to. The question is whether Derek wants to change or just wants things to be comfortable again. How do I tell the difference?" You have coffee with him and see if he's willing to actually listen. I agreed to meet Derek at a coffee shop near his office. He looked thinner than I remembered, stress evident in the tight set of his shoulders. We ordered drinks and found a table, the silence between us awkward and heavy. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You said you wanted to talk." "I did. I do." He ran a hand through his hair. "I've been seeing someone. A therapist. After Lauren left, I kind of fell apart. Threw myself into work, stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly. My senior partner pulled me aside and said I looked terrible, that I needed to deal with whatever was going on. How's that going?" "It's harder than I expected. Turns out I've been coasting on privilege my whole life without realizing it." He met my eyes. The therapist asked me to describe my relationship with my brother. When I finished, she pointed out that I described you as a competitor I needed to beat rather than a sibling I should support. The honesty surprised me. "Yeah? I've spent my whole life being told I'm special, that I'm the golden child, that everything I achieve is because I'm exceptional. It never occurred to me to question whether the playing field was level." He took a sip of coffee. "But it wasn't, was it?" "No, Derek. It really wasn't. I'm sorry." The words came out rough. "I'm sorry for every time I enjoyed being Dad's favorite. I'm sorry for letting you pay for celebrations of my achievements. I'm sorry for calling you jealous when you were just asking to be treated fairly." I sat with the apology, testing its weight. "I appreciate you saying that. Is there any way we can start over? Not forget everything that happened, but maybe build something new?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "We're not kids anymore, Derek. We're not going to suddenly become close brothers who talk every day. Too much has happened." "I know. But maybe we could be brothers who have coffee sometimes? Who show up for each other's important moments. Who actually know what's going on in each other's lives. Maybe. But Derek, I need you to understand something. I'm not coming back to family dynamics where I'm expected to accommodate everyone else. I've built boundaries, and I'm keeping them." "I get it. I'm trying to build my own boundaries, actually. With Mom and Dad, with work, with everything. Turns out I've been letting people use me too, just in different ways than they used you." We talked for another hour, carefully, like people navigating a truce in unfamiliar territory. By the end, we'd agreed to have coffee once a month, no parents, just the two of us getting to know each other as adults rather than the roles we'd been assigned as children. It wasn't a Hollywood ending. There were no tears, no dramatic hugs, no sudden transformation of our relationship. But it was real, and that mattered more. Update 2. It's been a year and a half since the restaurant incident, and I'm writing this final update because people keep asking if my family ever changed. The answer is complicated, like families always are. Mom and I have coffee twice a month now. She's still in therapy, still working on understanding her role in the family dynamics. She's started acknowledging my achievements unprompted, sending me articles about healthcare technology, asking detailed questions about Data Vault. It's not perfect, but it's real. Dad and I have an understanding. We're cordial at the few family events I attend, carefully chosen occasions where I've made clear I won't be covering costs for everyone else. He doesn't praise me the way he praises Derek, but he stopped being openly dismissive. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. Derek and I meet for coffee monthly, sometimes more if schedules align. We're building something new, separate from our childhood patterns. He tells me about cases he's working on, asks for advice on work-life balance. I tell him about Data Vault's expansion, and he actually listens. Last month, he came to a conference where I was speaking and sat in the front row. Afterward, he told me he was proud of me. It was the first time he'd ever said those words. Lauren and I have stayed friends. She's engaged to the senior associate she'd been dating, and they seem genuinely happy. She credits our unlikely friendship with helping her understand what healthy boundaries look like, which is funny because she helped me see the same thing. Data Vault Solutions just opened our 5th office, this time in Boston. We have 43 employees and contracts with hospital systems in 29 states. Tony and I are exploring an acquisition offer that would make us both financially set for life. The business I built while my family wasn't paying attention has become something neither of them can ignore. Sarah and I are expecting our first child in March. We've already decided that our kid will grow up seeing what healthy relationships look like, not perfect, because perfect doesn't exist, but honest. Where boundaries are respected, where achievements are celebrated equally, where love isn't conditional on meeting someone else's expectations. I ran into my father at a charity event last month. He was there with Derek, both of them in expensive suits, working the room. I was there representing Data Vault, which had donated a significant amount to the hospital foundation hosting the event. The evening's program included acknowledgments of major donors. When they called Data Vault Solutions and I stood up, I saw Dad's face register surprise. The company name he'd heard but never connected to me, the donation amount that exceeded what his real estate firm had contributed, it all clicked into place. After the ceremony, he approached me. Derek hung back, giving us space. I didn't realize, Dad said. The scope of what you've built. You never asked. No. I didn't. He looked older in the ballroom lighting, more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. Your mother tells me you're going to be a father. In a few months. Congratulations. He hesitated. I hope I get to meet my grandchild. That depends, I said carefully. On whether you can treat them better than you treated me. He flinched, and I felt a twinge of guilt. But I didn't take it back. My child deserved better than I'd gotten. They deserved a grandfather who showed up equally for all his grandchildren, who celebrated their achievements regardless of whether those achievements matched his expectations. I'm trying, Marcus, Dad said quietly. I know it's late. I know it's not enough. But I'm trying to be different. Then keep trying. And maybe someday, you'll get to be in their life. I walked away from that conversation feeling something I'd never felt with my father before, hope. Not certainty, not trust, but the possibility that people could grow, could change, could become better versions of themselves if they chose to do the work. The restaurant incident, that moment when I slid the bill back across the table, was a turning point. But it wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of me claiming my own narrative, refusing to play a supporting role in someone else's story of success. I don't regret standing up that night. I don't regret the distance it created, the relationships it fractured, the discomfort it caused. Because on the other side of that discomfort was freedom. The freedom to build a life on my own terms, to choose who gets access to me and under what conditions, to stop waiting for validation from people who were never going to freely give it. Some bridges burn. Others are dismantled carefully, brick by brick, until you can see clearly what was supporting them. My family's foundation was built on unequal ground, and no amount of pretending could make it level. But from the rubble, we're building something new. Smaller, maybe. More honest, definitely. Derek called me last week to ask if I'd be the best man at his wedding. He's marrying someone new, a teacher he met through friends who has no connection to our family or his legal career. Someone who likes him for who he is rather than what he represents. I know we're not there yet, he said. I know we're still figuring out how to be brothers. But you're the person I want standing next to me. Not because we're supposed to, but because I actually want you there. I said yes. Not because everything is fixed or perfect, but because he asked me as an equal, as someone whose presence mattered beyond fulfilling a role. Sarah says I'm more relaxed now, that the tension I used to carry in my shoulders has eased. Maxwell has started sleeping on my feet while I work, content in the stability of our routine. Our house feels like a home in ways our old apartment never did, filled with photos of people who actually want to be in our lives. The baby's room is ready, painted a soft gray with white clouds on the ceiling. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet, we want to be surprised. But I already know one thing for certain. This child will never wonder if they're loved, will never question whether they're enough, will never have to earn the basic respect that should be every child's birthright. That's what I learned from standing up at that restaurant. Sometimes the most radical act of self-love is simply refusing to accept less than you deserve. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge to find out who's willing to swim across the river to meet you on the other side. My father might never fully understand what he did wrong. Derek might always have blind spots about his privilege. But that's their work to do, not mine. My work is building a life where I'm not waiting for anyone's permission to be proud of myself. Data Vault Solutions is thriving. My marriage is strong. Real friendships have replaced hollow family obligations. And soon, I'll be a father myself, with the chance to break the patterns that shaped my childhood and create something better. That $5,650 bill at Mercer's? Best money I never spent. A final thought. In the end, family is about more than blood. It's about showing up, about seeing each other clearly, about choosing connection over comfort. Some people will never do the work required to love you well, and that's okay. Your job isn't to fix them or win them over. Your job is to build a life so fulfilling, so genuine, so aligned with your values that their approval becomes irrelevant. I found my worth in the silence after I said no. In the space created by boundaries, I discovered who I actually was beyond the role I'd been assigned. The people who mattered showed up in that space, some I expected, many I didn't. And the ones who couldn't make the journey? They taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that I could survive being unloved by the people I once needed most. Love isn't supposed to be conditional, calculated, or earned through endless sacrifice. Real love, the kind that transforms and heals, shows up freely or not at all. Once you understand that truth, everything changes. You stop chasing what was never meant for you and start nurturing what is. And in that shift, you find something more precious than any family dinner, any father's pride, any brother's respect. You find yourself whole, worthy, free.